Hi everyone, I am Jeff Lawton. I'm going to look at Game 3 from today's Magnus Carlsen Invitational tournament, which has been a brilliant tournament, and the final itself didn't let us down at all. And it was the third game. The scores at the time were 1 point each. Nakamura lost the first game, then he won the second, and in this game Magnus is white. And he opened with d4, so it's a 15-minute game with 10-second increments. Knight f6, we had c4, e6, knight to f3. We had d5, the Queen's Gambit, knight c3, bishop to e7, bishop to f4 again from Carlsen, castles, and e3, knight bd7, which is Nakamura's favoured line, and bishop e2 instead of the previous c5, which they even had that in the previous game with Magnus's black, and dc4. Castles for white and c5, so this is following the theory of the bishop e2 line. D takes c5, bishop takes c5, which is a slightly unusual way to capture. Bishop takes c4, and now a6. And now knight to g5. It's an odd looking move, but Carlsen clearly had come prepared for this line, and it's been played before by Wojciech against Andrekin last year. So we had b5. After some thought, bishop takes e6 from Carlsen, fe6, and now knight takes e6, queen e7, knight f8, queen takes f8. So white has got the rook and two pawns in exchange for a bishop and a knight, but if black can sort of calmly continue about developing, it should be okay for black in a middle game. But white has an interesting move here, knight e4. And as a result of this, he seems to manage to eliminate one of the black bishops, which makes a big difference to the position. Obviously, black can't go here. Knight takes e4 because of queen d5 check, forking the king and the rook. So this means that Magnus is threatening to take this and get rid of one of the bishops. And if this bishop drops back to save itself from capture, then knight d6 will either still force this one to be traded, or we can capture that one. And white gets what he wants, which is removing the bishop pair. So instead, we had bishop to b7, and after knight takes c5, queen takes c5, we now have not only rook and two pawns against bishop and a knight, but also against two knights now, but we also got opposite coloured bishops, which makes it interesting. So more interesting, I would say. So after rook c1, we had queen to d5, trying to swap the queens off. But Carlsen, very interestingly, he plays f3, intending just to give up this pawn on a2. So Nakamura captured that straight away. And now e4. Now this is the idea that the pawn chain here limits the scope of the bishop because it's just hitting granite. And in return, this means that white gets much better control of the white squares and basically makes this piece far less powerful. And in the meantime, the other point is that with the pawns on the white squares, this bishop is free to roam around because it's not blocking its own bishop. And now we had knight f8. If queen b2, then white can play rook to c7, which straight away attacks the bishop over here. And if you play bishop to c8, it's the only square for the bishop, then we can play e5. Now the knight can't move again because of queen d5 check, forking. And so we play queen b4, hitting the bishop. White can simply capture on f6, capture on queen f4, queen d5 check, king h8, and then double rooks with rook 1 to c1. And this is just completely winning for white. So, unable to do that, Nakamura played the better move, knight f8. And now a sort of really elegant move, also one of my favourite moves of the game, really, that it fits in with the pattern of the previous moves, playing f3 and e4. And now the rook is now defending along the second rank. So we then had rook to c8. Interestingly, this was criticised by the sort of high-level commentators, in particular Alexander Grishuk, because he was saying that black should keep the rook to work well with the other black pieces. But after this move, rook takes c8, bishop c8, queen d8, and we're now attacking the bishop. But also this rook, what they were trying to say was that this rook doesn't have an opponent now. It's got no rook to play against, to oppose it rather. So this means that it's got free reign of the files and ranks, which I found an interesting comment. And then we had queen e6, a strong defensive move, bringing the queen back to protect not only the bishop, but also it's ready to come back to e8 any moment. So we had bishop d6, threatening the knight, of course. And now queen e8 to stop that. Queen takes e8, and knight takes e8, and now another elegant move by Carlsen, bishop b4. So this time it's to stop the black pawn from advancing. And we had knight to e6, rook d2. So now we can see now the basis of Carlsen's plan. He's intending to bring his king up to e3 and then play f4, f5, given the opportunity. And then gradually the pawns on white will limit the white squared bishop here. And eventually white will hope to play this pawn forward as well to e5 and then to e6, supported by the f5 pawn. And it sounds very long-winded and will take time, but there's little black can do in the meantime, as the knights are not really able to sort of generate any obvious targets or threats here. So we had king f7, king f2, knight f6, king to e3. It's all part of the plan. Now g5, so Nakamura is doing his best to prevent f4. Now the rook went onto a much more active square on d6. We had knight to d7, and now g3. So this is the plan. We had knight to e5, so the knight might be coming here with check. So Carlsen prevented that with b3. And then we had h5, and now h4. So now we had g takes h4, g takes h4, and knight g6 hitting the h pawn. So the bishop dropped back to e1. Notice the bishop's doing two tasks at the moment, protecting this and trying to stop a5. So Nakamura took advantage of this opportunity and played a5. Then we had rook to d5 from Carlsen, hitting two black pawns. And at this point, the players are down to about 5 minutes each on the clock. We had a4 after a very long think by Nakamura, because he realised that and he burned up nearly 4 minutes there, because he realised that the position was now well beyond repair really. We had rook h5, we had knight e to f4, and now rook to g5. So Carlsen is not at all afraid of the pawn, because he's playing h5. At the moment we can't play b2, because then you can simply play check, knight takes, and then after rook b5 the rook comes and takes the pawn, completely winning for white. So the knight must drop back to f8, and now this time instead of rook b5 he's leaving the rook over here. Now the bishop prevents the pawn from advancing. So Nakamura played b4, so the bishop just calmly dropped back to b2, and this is the idea that the bishop's got reign of this diagonal here, which means that it can support the pawn advancing to h8, and at the same time it's preventing the pawns on the queen side from advancing. So it's a typical example, a beautiful example of the bishop operating on both sides of the board here. And we had a knight 8 to e6, rook f5 check, king g8, and now the rook captured the two knights, rook f4, knight f4, king takes f4, and now bishop a6. So it's impossible for Nakamura to defend this, perhaps even without the h pawn. I mean, he might still be lost, I'm not quite sure. Maybe there would certainly be more drawing chances. But with the presence of the three pawns, there's no way to defend For example, if you tried this move instead, king h7, then we can play king e5 and king h6. We can simply give this one up with f4, king h6, king takes h5, f5, and now bishop to b7, trying to prevent the advance of the pawn, or at least, sorry, stop the king advancing. But then white has time just to drop the king back calmly to f4. And now the king is too slow to come round. King h6, e5, king g7, and now e6 with a discovered check, of course. And then king f8, f6. Now white's king can advance. Bishop c6, king e5, bishop e8, king to d6. Now black has to give way, either the bishop or the king must move. For example, if you play bishop to h5, then we can play king d7, bishop to g4, and now bishop e5, sort of placing black in zugzwang. If the king moves, we can simply play king e7, followed by pushing the pawn through. And if instead bishop to h5, we can play e7 check, king g8, pawn on queen, bishop takes the queen, king e8, followed by f7 and f8, getting a queen and winning the game. So this just to demonstrate there's no way for black to defend this. Nakamura tried bishop a6. After king g5, we had bishop to d3, and now king g6. And now the killer threat is just to push the pawn straight through. So we had bishop back to b5, and now the pawns advance with f4, bishop e8 check. And this time, if the bishop tries to protect from the back, which is usually the way that you try and defend opposite bishop endings, you quite often try and attack the pawns from behind. But here, white could, for example, just play h6 and after bishop e4 check, f5. Now there's the threat of h7, h8, queen forces black to try bishop f5. After king f5, king h7, king g5, king g8, king g6. We're simply going to play h7, h8 with queen because the bishop controls the queenie square. So in the game, Nakamura played bishop e8 check, king g5, hanging on to the pawn a bit longer, bishop to c6, but now the pawns can advance safely on black squares. That one can with e5, bishop d5, f5, now king h7, and now e6. It's all over really now. Bishop to c4, we had king f6, bishop to e2, king to e7, and in this position Nakamura he resigned the game because after bishop h5 we just play f6 followed by f7 and f8, and there's no way to give up the bishop for the two pawns. So really, endgame masterpiece really from Carlsen, an endgame lesson, and very enjoyable. And in the final game he was in trouble actually. He seemed to be doing all right in the early middle game, but then he got into a very difficult endgame where he said he sort of defended inaccurately later on, and Nakamura posed him all sorts of problems, but he managed to wriggle out in a rook and pawn endgame at the end, sort of avoiding it going to the sort of the blitz playoffs games 5 and 6. So well done to Magnus Carlsen on winning his own tournament. Very much enjoyed this event, especially the semi-final with both semi-finals, but especially Carlsen's victory over Ding was a real roller coaster, absolute thriller of a match. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Bye now.